Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. This is the elephant in the room, and I am one of your hosts, Awake While Sleeping, aka Chris, and this is my co host, Ariel.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Listen, welcome to the show, you guys. We're so excited today. We are going to be bringing to you two amazing gentlemen in the industry who are doing amazing things in ufology and with the history of ufology. We're going to be
Mhm.
talking to John and Tom from the Estimate of the Situation. And we are going to just hear what they're doing and what their creativity and project has brought so far and what the future holds for them. Um, Ariel and I come to you guys about every 2 weeks. We're bringing guests on the show, and we've had Chrissy Newton last week, and this week
Wow.
is Estimate of the Situation. We have a couple of guests lined up through the end of December, and so we're excited to bring topics that we hope you guys are interested in. And I'm going to shout out to my young friend out there who I know is watching, our young fan, and I hope you enjoy today's show.
Instantaneous propulsion, right angles on a dime, hypersonic velocity without signatures of any kind. It didn't just want to be seen. It was mocking us.
There was a sort of luminescent
Encountered a large aerial craft.
Frantic inquiry up the chain of command confirmed what we already knew. It wasn't one of ours.
Dawned a new era. The era of the unidentified flying object.
This is a terrific piece of work here, this first issue.
I gotta be honest, I loved it so much. It's so consistent in its presentation. The artwork is fantastic.
The minute I saw what these guys were doing, I was all in.
I've got my copy already virtually, and it is fantastic.
My name is Tom Wojciechowski. I write, edit, work with John and Ezekiel and Mateus to put all this together and hopefully bring something that everybody enjoys.
Hi, my name is John Zoidis. I am a writer for BlackTieLabs, and I grew up in Queens, New York.
I've always had a bone to pick with how Hollywood's kind of portrayed the UFO phenomenon. It's always kind of cheesy, campy. It's not grounded in the reality that like it actually happened in. And I know John says this a lot. It's almost like you don't have to embellish the truth because the truth is a lot stranger than what you think it is.
You know, I was the type where I'm like, there's probably some other explanation. But then once I got into the research, pretty quickly, I realized like, oh yeah, it's actually kind of irrational to acknowledge that there wasn't something going on here.
I was always involved with UFOs in the community. I always really wanted to know what was going on. Back in 1947, there were a series of sightings that made the newspapers. At the same time, we're traveling through intelligence channels, and it became this big mystery, at least for us in the military sense, as to figure out what these things were that were flying around.
And obviously I didn't live in the 40s, so I can only go based off the research, but there seemed to be a brief moment in time when the UFO phenomenon first started where it was like a fact.
It's a story about a group of men facing something they've never seen before and are using their whatever resources they have and their own wits available to them to find out what this was.
In terms of the public consciousness, the public was at least accepting pretty immediately that there are these things flying around and they could be extraterrestrial or at the very least advanced military technology, whether they thought it was the US or Russia. And then pretty quickly, that fact becomes fiction and it becomes conspiracy and conspiratorial thinking.
Project Sign is basically a government mandated project at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where they got our best intelligence officers, our best aeronautical engineers to come together and solve the UFO mystery.
I think it's important to tell the story from the investigators because, again, we want to go on the journey with them and we want to be able to see what they're seeing because we're trying to get a front row seat to what actually was going on. And the people who had the front row seat were those investigators. At the same time, they had the expertise, the intelligence, and the resources to actually figure out what's happening. So if you're along with them, by the end, you will get a very clear idea of what went on and what this could have been.
I want someone to read the book and walk away with understanding what happened in this time period. They have the names, the dates, the events. They can go cross-reference it themselves, and they can go down their own rabbit hole, hopefully in historical context, right? Because there's a lot of BS out there concerning this topic. This way, they have almost like a roadmap and a very I don't even want to say elementary understanding, because we do go really in depth into what went on, but they have a framework that they can use now to fill in the puzzle pieces for themselves. So it's like almost like an element of self-disclosure, at least in my highest aspirations.
Looking through the eyes of these investigators, and we're along the journey with them, figuring out information as they go along and finding out new revelations in order to get them closer or further from the truth.
We walk them through it.
I want them to come away with that first issue feeling like we are telling an honest story, that we're staying true and respectful of the UFO phenomenon.
I think it does it justice to someone who's wanted something like this, grounded in reality, grounded in an element of truth, to further their interest in the topic.
I'm going to bring in John and Tom, and we'll get started. Yay. Hey, everyone. Hey, guys. This is John and Tom, and welcome to our show, Elephant in the Room. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. We were hoping to start with you guys just sharing a little bit about your backgrounds and how you got into this and how you met.
I'll let John go first. I think he has a much more interesting background, seeing as he came from.
Sure. Well, I'm John. I'm the co-founder of BlackTieLabs. I'm the co-writer, co-creator of Estimate of the Situation, the UFO comic that I'm doing with Tom. Our backgrounds, actually, we met at acting school. I'm a trained actor. We met at a conservatory in New York City. We graduated, in 2016? So we met almost 10 years ago now, 2014. We actually found out, just randomly when we were taking class together, that we grew up in the same neighborhood in Queens, and we had a lot of mutual friends, which is a very New York thing. Yeah, it's crazy. And continued to do that. I got my master's degree in DC. I was writing a bit at the time, and then at some point, Tom has always been interested in UFOs. We would have discussions about it, and eventually he had this UFO project idea, sent me a rough issue that he had, wanted me to take a look at it and edit it. And essentially, my opinion was that, I think it might be a different way to approach this. Essentially, Tom could elaborate more on that. And he straight up just asked me, would you like to come on board? And, that was 2 years ago, something like that. Started with the research. I was a complete, and this is an interesting dynamic that we had. I was a complete newbie, very light dilettante when it came to the UFO research. I wasn't particularly interested in it at all. It was through working on the comic and through Tom that I got into this research. So I came in with just a completely fresh set of eyes, as objective as you could possibly be as just a normal layman person reading about this stuff. So it's just I think a very interesting dynamic working back and forth, because Tom is borderline encyclopedic on this stuff. I had to roll my sleeves up to get to it. And, and yeah, now we're here. We're a few issues in, just plugging away, just, trying to build our company in this property, and building it from the ground up. And it's been great.
What about you, Tom? Tell us a little bit about, it sounds like you had the interest in UFOs first. So I'm curious if you want to share a little bit about that and how that kind of propelled you into this space.
Yeah. I guess I grew up watching X-Files and all that stuff when I was younger, and I always seemed to gravitate to that. But I had a couple experiences, and I hate saying this publicly because you feel crazy talking about it.
Not here. We're your people.
Yeah.
It sticks with you, right? Like it really sticks with you. And I had an opinion where it was like, okay, I believe in this stuff and it seems to make sense that the government will be lying to you about it, but I never had a way to articulate it. I met John in acting school, and we did 2 years there at the conservatory. It was a pretty interesting school. And even then, I started to realize that I didn't like what I was doing. I'd much more rather be behind the camera, so to speak, bringing projects together, putting them together. And I went and started doing commercial work. But the entire time I'm doing commercial work, I'm thinking about this topic. Like I can't let it go. And one day somebody asked me, "Is like, well, why do you think, why do you think they're here? Or why do you believe that this stuff is real?" And I couldn't really give like a direct answer, like it was just like I just believe it. So I got really pissed off and I was a little embarrassed. So I went home, I got like one of those big, like cork boards and started piecing stuff together. And I came across this one book called UFOs and Government by Michael Swords, I think Richard Haynes, a bunch of other scholars, Jan Aldrich, and it documented basically the government response strictly through the archive, through the historical documentation of how the government responded and what they thought of these things at the time. And it blew my mind because I had no idea that there was such an extensive record of these people talk to each other about a very real and very serious problem. And the more I piece it together, I fell in love with this thing, with this, it's called Project Sign, which was a project that included our best engineers, our best, aeronautical engineers, intelligence officers, civilian engineers that were tasked with finding out what the hell is going on in 47. So once I found that and like followed that paper trail all the way to like their quote unquote estimate of the situation, which was their conclusion, I was like, holy shit, I can't believe nobody knows about this, right? So started working on a draft. Our artist is Eagle Anastasia. I actually found him through Facebook, and we've been working for a long time. I'm happy to say that he's in a much better place since working with us. And it's one of those things where it's like a lot of people are putting a lot of passion into this project, which is really cool. But as John said, I had a first draft, and the idea was that this topic has always been represented so poorly. I think, in media, it's always a B movie. It's always something crappy or silly. I was like, this is real and this is serious. So I wrote a first draft with that in mind, and I was nagging John for a while, and John finally said, "Screw it, let's meet up at I think it was a bar or something like that." And I came over with everything of this whole portfolio of documents and timelines and stuff. And
Wow.
Oh,
from
that's
the
so
outside,
cool.
it looked really crazy, like the bartender's like looking at us like, what the hell are they doing? He took it home and he said yes. He said, I'll come on board, but I think this is a page one rewrite. And we went back to the drawing board.
Wow.
And yeah, that was like a huge like shit.
Oh,
What do we do? But I am really glad, and I am really glad that John said yes, because truth be told, this project cannot exist without John. It's since he's come on board and pretty much helped me put BlackTieLabs together, and just taken on the role of just being co-founder and co-creator of Estimate Situation. It's just grown to be almost like a little bit of an indie cult hit in our little sub circle.
Yep.
So I'm really happy about that. And, that's basically the project in a nutshell. And, just trying to make something that people won't feel ashamed when they recommend it, concerning this topic. So that's basically it. Oh, and I got recruited by the CIA, I think, in like 2014 out of acting school. They saw how good I was, and they're like, let's put him in that role.
so we can confirm the rumors.
Yes.
Excuse me. Do you guys have any other goals for the comic book besides, really this historical truth that you want to keep to it? Obviously, what are your kind of goals for the series, and what's your dream for it?
I mean, ultimately, I want to finish the series, right? I want to make sure it's like we keep talking about the omnibus, like we have 8 issues that are planned, and it goes from the beginning to the end of Project Sign. And again, everyone always talks about Project Blue Book. Sometimes they mention Project Grudge before that, but Project Sign is really as far as I know, like the only investigation they took seriously at Wright Patterson. So I want, the omnibus, and that's something that's going to stay forever, in digital or print, and you can give it to your kids, you can give it to whoever, basically, and they'll have a very thorough understanding of who, what, where, and why. And beyond that, John and I talk about, well, how cool would this be if this was a film? Like a film that does it justice, film that like
Yeah.
you watch and you can be like, for instance, James Fox is the phenomenon. It's a documentary, right? But it's
Right.
very compelling, as well as a moment of contact. And you
Right.
can walk away from that like with a lot of questions and your own rabbit hole, right?
Mhm.
Go down, and that's really what I want to provide at the end of the day, no matter what medium. And I know John. I think John has a similar, trajectory, maybe different. I don't know.
So,
I agree.
so quick question: if you want to possibly see this be made into a film, John, since you're an actor, would you get to star in it?
I'll take a bit part if they are.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to
I'm not
behind the
looking to
camera
star.
with me. Like I'm
Yeah,
not.
I would like to be behind the camera.
Okay. All right. Fair
Great
enough.
This is
fair
not
enough.
meant. Yeah, this is not meant to be a vehicle to
This is-
kickstart my
propel your
my
acting
movie star
career.
career. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we don't
It
need
can
another
do
rumor.
both. It can do both. You
Right?
can-
No, you're right. You're right. You're right.
That's
I mean,
that's
yeah,
the
For sure.
the
Well, to me, it's a
long way
vision.
in.
It's a vision, and it's something that we recently got Monsters of California, which to Tom DeLonge's credit, it's his first film,
Right.
but it's like it can be better than what
Yeah.
we're getting, and it's
Mhm.
like it really like I can't give that to someone and be like, here, take a look at this, and maybe you'll be compelled to do your own research or go down the rabbit hole. That's more of like a for the in crowd. I want something
Yeah.
more that like raises questions for people en masse. I want people to know who Kenneth Arnold is. I want people to know who Vandenberg is, what Project Sign was about, like
Mhm.
so
Into the story.
Yeah,
very compelling.
I love the accessibility of it. I mean, especially with today's younger generation, everything is in front of their faces. We have TikTok, there's Instagram, everything is visual, everything is right there. These younger people and kids are not going to go searching out UFO history unless they have that hook, unless something grabs their attention. And so I think something like a comic book, it really makes it accessible.
yeah, absolutely. And like even look at the topics that are really popular today, like the multiverse, different dimensions. These were all big topics in comic books
In
like
comic
years
books.
before,
Yeah,
and it's
right.
like
Superman
now,
was the
yeah, and now it's in the cultural
original.
zeitgeist. It's a great way to just get it out there and get people talking about it. And
Yeah.
I think what we do is like, we get people talking about it without them realizing they're being educated, right? Because
Right.
it is pretty compelling, the story itself. So, they don't know that it's almost like a historical documentary, so which I think is pretty cool.
Whose idea was it to include the the documents in the packaging and and the folders and the stamps and I'm oh, I love it.
I'm trying to point to Tom. Hold on. I'm sorry.
That way-
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
It's
man.
just,
I'm such an experiential person. I I was in healthcare for 30 years and I did patient experience. And so, it was the little nuances of that experience that really raises the level. I mean, you want the
Mhm.
quality to be there, but then you want to raise the level of experience. And I thought you nailed it. You nailed
Thank
that
you.
moment. So thank you for that.
Yeah, like I gave it to a buddy of mine who works in commercials, and he's like, dude, this is like a luxury UFO experience, using the language that he knows.
Yes.
But like it really is, it's a love letter, like
Mm.
it's an experience opening it with the red tape and everything, a top
Yeah.
secret sign. It's like it's meant to bring you in that world, because once you start reading, like you do get transported to 1947 and all the
You
clandestine
really do.
activities, and we just want to start that from the very beginning and just also show that like we care.
Yeah, even the idea of like, the descriptions of sightings are unchanged and the names of people are unchanged. The following, I mean, part of that for us is like we just want to let you know we're on the journey with you. Like this is the research that we discovered as well, and we're trying to give it to you through a narrative. So that's part of that idea too. Is like we're right there with you.
Wow.
We're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. We're not trying
Yeah.
to trick you or subvert anything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's why
Talk
John.
about-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say talk a little bit about the research and what went into it and I think Ariel, you had some information you were going to ask about some of the historical research. So,
Yeah, I was just kind of curious as you were researching, especially John being, someone who was new to this topic, what jumped out at you? What surprised you as you're kind of sinking your teeth into this world, into this research and looking stuff up? Was there anything particular that kind of just was like a whoa moment,
I mean, yeah. I mean, when I first started that first week reading the research, I think my jaw was just like this the whole time. I think
Yeah.
immediately number one, I mean, just trying to break it down logically, I remember thinking, and even talking to Tom when we first met, like, oh, we're gonna have to figure out what sightings are I'm coming from a place of ignorance, right? And actually a place
right.
of doubt. What sightings are the most compelling ones? Which ones have the most evidence for? What could we show? And be confident that they might have happened. And then I start getting into the research and I'm like, there are so many
Many.
sightings. And
Mhm.
what I found, even at the end of it, what I find more amazing than anything is how this history was able to be completely
Hidden.
buried
Yeah.
and just dismissed
Yeah.
as a
Yep.
conspiracy theory. And anyone who believed in it were quacks up until 10 minutes ago. I mean,
Mhm.
literally, with the advent of Twitter, I felt stupid. Like I have been so duped. I used to pick on Tom about this stuff. And I'm
Oh,
like, not
yeah.
only we used to argue about it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's got to be some explanation. And
Yeah.
and it's just like there's just, I mean, hundreds of people seeing the same thing,
Mhm.
hundreds of headlines across the country for
Paper.
months
Yeah.
and months that were just accepted to be true. It wasn't like we don't know if we're seeing something. It's like this is happening, but what is it? And it was completely buried. And then you have the fact, again, just Project Sign itself. We have the wake of World War II. We have the looming war now with Russia, which became very clear after the war that they were a budding superpower as well, and we were going to potentially have to go to war with them in some capacity in the future. There's all this paranoia around it, and they took the time to take their greatest intelligence officers, their greatest engineers, their greatest scientists, the FBI, who at the time were dedicated in infiltrating Russian spies and communist sympathizers and everything. And they all mobilized to investigate this phenomenon.
This topic.
And none of us
Wow.
know this. I mean,
Wow.
it was that,
Exactly.
it was just, that's why. So
Wow.
it wasn't one event. It was just, I'm reading this like, and it was just shocking to me. Like, how do we not know this stuff?
Yeah.
And I just, it's another thing, especially now with the UFO community and Twitter and social media and everything else. And that I just realized, like, wow, it doesn't take a lot to dismiss history or dismiss people as quacks or conspiracy theorists out in the pejorative sense. All it really takes is media bombardment. It really just
Yep.
takes like kind of
Literally.
just creating this tribal mentality where you tap into our really deep biological impulses to want to be part of the group and just make you feel crazy and feel like you're going to be exiled, socially speaking. If you believe this stuff or if you talk about this stuff, it just takes media bombardment. That's all it takes, and it's all it took. I mean, quite literally. I'm sorry, that was a long answer, but yeah, it was just really the history itself. From even Kenneth Arnold, I thought he was a
I was
quack.
just about to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel so bad because I read him like this guy was a patriot. He was
Yeah.
a totally respected businessman.
Yeah.
He really was just doing his from his perspective, his patriotic duty. And then his life got so messed up, but by the end of it, he literally said, I mean, it's a great quote where they're like, if you saw another UFO, would you tell anybody? He goes, if I saw a floating building, I wouldn't tell a soul.
Yeah.
That's how bad it got.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
It's incredible.
It's appalling to see and to talk to some experiencers who have lived their whole life going through that stigmatization and it's who lives, who dies, who tells your story, right? How is the story going to be told? And I think that's what you guys are doing is you're stepping out and you're saying, hey, we're going to tell the story a different way than what you've been told all these years. Which is
exactly
cool.
Like, I want to be clear, we're standing on the shoulders of giants because this is also a love letter to the researchers that, like, a lot of people don't know about, who have, thrown their entire lives, their entire careers into investigating this. And we're talking about Wendy Connors, Jan Aldrich, Michael Swords, Barry Greenwood, I mean, Richard Haynes, a bunch of people that like
Yep.
you don't hear about them today, but like it's because of them that we know
Yep.
anything to begin with. It's because that they dug so tirelessly. They interviewed so many people, collected so many newspaper clippings. I mean, Ted Blocher like put together an entire timeline. You know, like there's multiple references we go to, but these are all from people who have done the work before us, right? And these are
Mhm.
like the Sign Historical Group for one. And there was one in particular, I mentioned her a lot, Wendy Connors, because Wendy Connors passed away while we were making issue one. And during that time, she had like before that she had this collection of archived interviews and articles on faded discs .org or .com, and they ended up making their way into the archives. But you know, I emailed her and I was like, wow, like, can you tell me more? And that's the one thing, like her, Jen Aldrich, David Marler, like these people like were happy to talk to someone about just a historical record, you know. And Wendy Connors was like just like an angel. I mean, she opened up her archives of interviews of surviving relatives of Project Sign, like you know, like the sons of some of the engineers and intelligence officers going on record for like an hour and a half talking about what it's like to, you know, what their fathers are like, what did they say about it, you know, how did they act during that time. And again, the more layers you peel back, 1947, 1948 was like a hidden chapter of American history that no one knows about. Like John said, it was accepted. It wasn't even like, it was like, oh, what is it? It was accepted. The Army Air Force was putting out multiple statements saying, we're going to investigate it. We're going to find out what it is. I mean, I think the leading theory was that it was either domestic or it was Russian. Russian was the kind of the
Right.
answer in the Pentagon, right? But most people thought these are guided missile projects, right?
Mhm.
And it's just, it blows your mind, really, you know, like how buried it is. And sometimes we'll go into these rabbit holes and like we'll try to look into somebody, and I'll spend hours and hours looking for any record of someone mentioned in a document.
Mhm.
Like John, like all I found were their graves. Like that's literally all I found were their graves and maybe a few surviving relatives. And it's morbid, but like there's nothing else after that, even though they were
The
like
greatest aeronautical engineers the U.S. had produced
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
Really?
You know, with
Wow.
patents, like very important people. Like I mean, Alfred Ludding, I think
on par with von Braun.
I mean, was just by all accounts was just absolutely brilliant. I believe it was the B-29 bomber. It kept lighting on fire. He was the one who solved the problem. He had hundreds of patents. I mean, constantly inventing. Was by all accounts just a scientific sponge.
Wow.
Was a brilliant administrator. I mean, he was so brilliant that even when they buried him and he eventually had to leave the military, he still kept his contacts, and they still, you know, he was used in consultant work and stuff. And like, it's just very difficult to find stuff about these people. I mean, I'm amazed sometimes. I mean, Tom is just, he pulls out this research sometimes. I'm like, I don't know how you find this stuff. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, just to his point, it's just amazing that they buried the history of the people themselves who investigated these things. It seems
Yeah.
that way, you know.
And to that point, I mean, it was really awesome, John coming in, because like he had that fresh set of eyes, and I was very much like, they're lying to us. Look, you know, with John, it was like, okay, well, show me how, show me why they're lying. And I think that translated into the series, where at first it was kind of like an established fact that these are real. Once John and I started crafting it together, you know, it started to become this journey of like, okay, we're looking at it through the eyes of the investigators and following them along the journey. So like we go through all the twists and turns they do, you know, all the like any hoaxes they might come across or any different ways of thinking, up until the point where this team, and this is a kind of a spoiler, but this team eventually does conclude that, like, you know, they're not anybody's, right? And they have to send that to the Pentagon, and that's the climax of the series. And you know what happens behind that closed door meeting is hasn't been let out, but we know the results. The team gets disbanded. You know, Alfred Ludding, for instance, the engineer, just I had a quote said that his stock has never been lower at the Pentagon. You know, and his son said that, yeah, like it wasn't a good time after that. You know, so this really affected real people.
Yeah.
Wow. What if anything does your research cover, or does it not, on the Trinity case? Is there any connection back to that, and or do you feel there's any validity to that?
The Trinity case is interesting. I I just bought a book on it recently, Oppenheimer and UFOs. Uh, it's something that is we touch on various different parts, right, of the series. Like we touch on Roswell a bit. We
Right.
probably will touch on Trinity because that's a very big, very big moment in time. But these are not as substantiated as what we
Right.
have. So we're sticking strictly to the historical record that has been found through the researchers. Any sort of corroborating points that are sort of anecdotal, we will kind of touch on, but we want to make sure that like we present something that is rooted in fact, right? And
That's awesome.
Trinity is complex. There's different reasons to believe it. There's different reasons to not believe it. I'm still undecided, and you
Okay.
know, you start looking into Majestic 12 documents then because a lot of corroboration comes from there, and
Mm.
those seem to be somewhat tampered with, although some people think that there's some real information in there and some that's not real that was meant to throw off the Russians. But then it's like, well, if you know if the well is poisoned, you drink from the well, right? So
Yeah.
we dance around it a bit, and anything we think that is substantial, we do touch on.
Very interesting. Very cool.
That's so interesting. I had a quick question. If just jumping in
You
here.
don't have to ask.
Your show.
I know. So I'm kind of curious about the writing process. And do you guys have background in writing? Because I have done a little writing off and on, and I know that writing dialogue is kind of a whole beast in itself. I mean, you can take entire courses on just learning to write good dialogue. So, what was that, creative
Mm.
process like for you of, writing something that's has so much dialogue in it?
Honestly, my dialogue is notoriously bad. Like it's very matter of fact, whereas John has a great way of like bringing in a human element
Human.
to it. So I'll defer to John on the whole dialogue process, but it is a lot of editing between us where we'll send each other drafts and like it's like this needs to be cut or this needs to be expanded on or this is too much. And a lot of like what you see in the first two issues, I mean, it's cut down a lot. Like, you know, and the
I can
pacing
imagine.
is edited so it's like it moves along pretty quickly. But like, I mean, the drafts are probably like I want to say like maybe half as much as longer than you see what you see in the book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I write a lot as well, and I tend to be wordy, and so I can't imagine the process of narrowing it down to very succinct dialogue that represents, a whole story. I mean, that's
We fight a lot.
Yeah.
Which piece of
Over.
dialogue go in and which don't, but
Yeah.
it's,
I'll say, at least for me, I mean, I do love dialogue. You know, I grew up watching films, plays. I love like the banter of like Aaron Sorkin films, Harold Pinter plays. I do love Shakespeare. I mean, a bunch of stuff. I at least two things, and this is something we struggled with at first. Just giving these because we wanted to be so respectful of the history and of these men, but like we literally just said, there's not a lot on them. So we have to take what we can get and eventually just lean into a certain personality for each
Yeah.
person. And once we leaned into the
Character.
personality of who this man is and what they are like, then the dialogue I found flowed a lot better. And also just writing a lot, like Tom said, and trimming down. I always like to write big chunks. I can get monologue-y, and then Tom eventually will come in and be like, we could have maybe 20% of that. And so then we cut it down, and then
the
just
fight
getting
ensues.
obsessive with it. Yeah. We'll fight over word. Like I'll just like, I'm going to the store tomorrow. Like, I don't know, do you need the 2? I literally, this is what I'll do. And I'll go
I love
on
it.
about it.
We had a
That's
big
amazing.
We'll get
it's
we go
classified.
big and then we make it granular. You know what I mean?
I love it.
So that is part of it.
There's
How
like
do
a
you
line in
guys?
the first one that's like, you know, at the end Diamond's like it's classified and like John didn't like that and I was like, no, it's cool. Like
Yeah, we'll define it. Yeah. Just 2
That
words.
is
Like
so
we'll argue
funny.
about it for 30 minutes.
Oh my
gosh.
Makes life interesting, I guess.
Yeah, that's just part of the creative process,
Yeah.
It really is. And
Yeah.
and what a dynamic experience to be able to bounce ideas off another person. I think that's just so valuable.
And I think what's interesting too, going back to what I was before, and Tom being really embedded into the UFO phenomenon, it being an interest of his growing up, whereas me, I came in more as a layman and as an objective person. just finding out what people find compelling or not. I find like we're
Mm.
the two sides where Tom's like, no, the UFO community's really gonna love this. Where I'm like, if I find this compelling, a normal person who doesn't even care much about UFOs will find this
We'll
compelling.
find it.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean? And that really helps in our dynamic too.
that's
Yeah.
good. I was gonna say how hard, because I feel like it might be hard to really get the message across that this is historically accurate. I mean, I know it says it, and that's why I love those pages, but how do you get that across to your audience so that, because of the stigmatization of the topic and because of everything that's been out there, in the past, what do you guys do to really project that out?
I have a really easy answer for that, and it's something John says pretty often too. We don't embellish. We don't. I mean, we take creative liberties where we can, because some of these meetings do happen behind closed doors, like John says. So we kind of have to. We know the outcomes. We know what it says in the documentation, but like we have to imagine what they said in the
What's it?
room to get to that conclusion. But for the most part, it's like the truth is stranger than fiction. It's more about
Mm,
we have a trouble showing, like, deciding what not to show or what not to put in, because there's just so much, and it's like it blows my mind that Hollywood or whoever always needs to add some sort of weird little gimmick to it, or
Yeah.
make this extravagant like invasion. It's like the truth is so much
already.
than any of the fiction that you've seen. It's mind blowing,
Wow.
and just stay true to it. We stay true and to the story, and I think that's the best and easiest way to actually impart the fact that this is like a historically accurate thing.
Yeah.
We're
And I
honest.
think it comes across. I do think it comes across. I didn't want to imply it doesn't. It's
Mm.
just that I know that that's a message that is so important
Yeah.
for you guys. So
Yeah, and that's really what it's like, what not to show, because what happens too, it could be too much of a good thing where we could show 10 sightings in a row that are substantiated by historical fact, newspapers, reports, and all that stuff. But if you just get bombarded with that as an audience member, you take out the mystery, you take out the intrigue, and it's hard to just, again, even just reading the research, hard for your brain to hold it all.
Yeah.
Even now, 2 years later, I'm just like, I'll go back and read these sightings, and I'll just be like, I cannot believe this happened.
We
This
have
is
made
crazy.
so many timelines and so many graphs. Like it
Yeah.
is, we have binders of just like stuff that we've made just to help
I
us
can
go along,
imagine.
and it takes so long. I mean, we have the estimate of the situation document itself. Like we have like the pyramid and like how it travels and where when it becomes this and when it becomes that. It's like it's so much. It really it makes me. It doesn't make me wonder anymore why no one's actually tried to tackle it this way, because the amount of research that like
Mm,
is like
that's
it's insane,
fair.
especially for us too. It's just two of us. I can only imagine, um, a bigger team, I guess, maybe combing through documents, but then like, are they really going to do that?
It's
No.
still
Yeah.
consolidating it.
I
It's
think
just,
they would.
yeah, they would. Yeah.
I mean, there's enough interest. It's just, the time, like you said. I mean, it is a love letter, like you said, from you guys, because the dedication and time and energy, the research. I mean, you're going to have to archive your research at some point. I mean,
Yeah.
really, because I can imagine what you guys have learned. Um,
Yeah,
very,
I mean, I have
very
8
cool.
different folders just I have to itemize it and just be so uh, organized with where to find everything. I mean, we'll
can
again,
imagine.
it's not even arguments. We'll go back and forth and be like, which meeting happens first? That one happens here at the Pentagon, or that happens at
Yeah.
AMC. And then what was the date on that? And it's like, oh, we don't have an exact date, but that was before he met with Truman, right? Okay. And then
Yeah.
Oh
so
my God.
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
constant reminders. I mean, I can't imagine someone doing this alone.
You
First
would
off,
have to have an
Right.
amazing timeline. I literally,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I'm a timeline person, and I've been trying to timeline my experiences, and it's funny because the timeline changes because you think something starts here, and then you look
Right.
back at your life and you're like, wait a minute, that was related. And then so uh, this whole timeline visual for historically documenting can become so elaborate and so
Oh yeah.
overwhelming. I can't even imagine
Yeah.
what your guys' workload looks like when you're trying to figure that out.
big cork boards, lots of yarn. It really looks like a typical conspiracy theory.
I love it.
Yeah,
You know, you guys should do some some
Yeah.
pictures in the back. What is it called?
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have a few. They're not pretty.
They're not pretty.
Oh my
Folders
goodness, no,
everywhere,
people would love
People
to see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Send
I'll
me
look
one.
those
Send
up.
me one.
I mean, this is why we argue for 30 minutes about a piece of dialogue. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, that's great.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, even when we have a huge chunk and a huge script, we're like, even when we have to edit half of it out, it's like, okay, at least we're done. At least we have the blueprint now for issue 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Are you guys full time at this, or do you have other things that you're tackling at the same time? If you don't mind me asking,
It's full time in a sense where it's stacked on what we're doing. We have jobs that, like that's the one thing about this community too, is like there's been so many grifters that have come into this community and have taken
Right.
from people. So like I was really adamant about like, self-financing at least the first portion of this to show that like, hey, not only are we not asking for
Committed.
anything, we're delivering, right? And we're
Mhm.
doing
Yes.
it on our
Yeah.
time because we care and we want to get this done. So I mean, we work a lot to finance this. John just had a I don't know if I can say it on air, but he has something to be very
No, I just had a baby, so
Yay!
a lot of life changes.
Congratulations.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Are
What
you the
about
godfather of the baby?
What's that? Say it again?
Is Tom the godfather of your baby?
No,
The
no,
UFO
he's not.
godfather.
Would you like the UFO godfather?
the UFO
UFO
godfather?
Let's make
Yeah.
that a thing.
That's a
Right.
thing.
It's a
Uncle
great marketing
Tom.
tool. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But I see you have #1 framed up over there. That is so awesome. Like the fact that
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I
Wow, I just
mean,
noticed
can
that.
you believe it?
That's awesome.
that is
I-
awesome.
I have the Kenneth Arnold
Oh, the 1 of 1.
first print 1 of 1. I mean, I am so proud of that. I usually have it in my art studio, but I had to bring it here for you guys.
We love
Nice.
that.
Have you
That's
had a
great.
chance to read the second one yet?
I'm reading it right now.
Nice.
I'm about halfway through. So
It's thick, right? It's thick.
yeah, it really is. I was like comparing them, and then we also have this one. We had to order this version.
The Virginia
The
cover.
Virginia
Yeah.
cover.
Yeah,
They're
so
not
we-
in print anymore.
No, my husband got that one. So we've been fans the whole time, and it's funny because I told my son, I'm going to be interviewing these guys. Like, you got to tell me about comics, and he's like, Mom, you used to read comics more than I did, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't count. And he's like, yes, it does, because I used to read Archie. Okay, growing up, I
That
was
counts, yeah.
the biggest Archie fan, and I was like, you're right. I read more comics than I mean, every single day I'd buy one of those little digests and read them.
They're still going.
Yeah,
Still going.
and I'm so sad that I don't have them. I don't know what I did with them, and I probably owned every one of them, including this, the regular magazine one. So it's really cool that he reminded me about that, and I'm like, yeah, it really. And he knows I struggle with ADHD and reading, so he's like, Mom, you really should gravitate towards this type of genre of reading because it'll help you. And I'm like, oh, you're right.
So I love hypothetical questions. So if you could have dinner with any of the characters in your comic book series, who would you have dinner with and why?
Ooh, this is good.
Oh, that's tough.
So good.
I'm gonna go with my instinctive answer that went in my head right away. No, Vandenberg.
I think so too. I think that's the guy I would choose too.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, just to help the rumor that we're CIA assets. They're the first CIA director, kind of. I would like to know what he's actually like, and just kind of pick his brain, and just like a guy that I would like to know his personality and how he thinks.
Interesting.
A guy like that.
Interesting.
What a great question. What about you? Why you picked the same person, Tom? But
I
why?
think so. Well, I mean, he was the head of the precursor to the CIA. Eventually ended up going to the CIA, I believe, and had a very big impact on ufology at least from the historical record. And if there was anybody that would know what's going on at the time, it would have been him. And during Roswell, he made a couple meetings, had a couple calls, and he's the one guy I think.
Mm.
If it wouldn't be him, it'd probably be McCoy, who's the who pretty much ran Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, because who
Okay.
also, you know, might have been in and out. But I mean, I
Oh,
just want to know. Like at the end of the day, I want to know
yeah,
what these are. You know,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
I'm under the assumption even in dinner, like he wouldn't tell me. Even
yeah,
I still want to have dinner with him.
it's classified.
You know,
Yeah.
none of those
Good
guys
point.
would.
Good point.
Yeah,
True.
Ludding would. So if I wanted someone who wanted to tell me
Yeah,
Alfred, like, because he told his son a lot.
yeah.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
he was vague enough, but like, you know, his son knew a good deal. But we also don't know the time of when he actually told them. Like, you know, he told
Right.
him well after, you know.
yeah. Even you
Wow.
know, like I think there was it was Dyerman's son who you know, said that like a lot of these people take these secrets to the grave because, you know, back then especially, it was a very patriotic thing to
Yes.
keep this
Yeah.
intelligence. And
Yeah.
you know, again, you had Soviet hysteria at the time,
Right.
and it's
After the war.
yeah, and you know, to tie that back into the series, you know, it's our our series takes that all into account, where it's mostly like this psychological thriller of these men trying to deal with something that they have never uh encountered before. Exactly,
Yeah.
with the backdrop of like, oh, Soviet Russia's gonna drop a nuclear bomb on us anytime, you know, so you can only
Yeah.
imagine the paranoia and hysteria, and now they're confronted with something they cannot explain, which at first they think is civilian, and they start seeing over the military bases, and they're like, okay, well, we need to mobilize, like John said, to figure out what the hell is going on. If Russia leapfrogged us somehow, we need to know how and why and how to defend ourselves. So that to me is the psychological aspect of this is so interesting. It's so much more
Mhm.
interesting than, again, like a typical alien invasion, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a great story that his son says in the interview, actually, where and just to speak to his father's candidness and patriotism, or you know, he asked him years later, you know, about a particular case, I believe, and it's like, Dad, what actually happened? Like his dad is retired at this point. He's working in private industry, and his father said that'll be declassified in 2025. I think that was the year, and
Oh,
he goes,
really?
yeah, and he's like, Dad, I'm probably gonna be dead by then. Like we're both gonna be dead. Like, and he's like, yeah, well, that'll be declassified in 2025. Just wouldn't
Wow.
tell him.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
That's
I had an
crazy.
uncle who who worked for the Department of Energy, and he never spoke about what he did. And this is in New Mexico. And now I just wish he was my godfather, the UFO godfather. No, I don't know that he dealt with UFOs, but it just wouldn't surprise me. And I'm just so curious, you know, what was going on during that time with the DOE and
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, they had to be involved,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they
and
were
he
involved.
wouldn't speak about anything.
I mean, I will say, Tom, who was it? Was it Jan? Who did you have that interview with?
Was
Or spoke
which
on the
one?
phone?
Jan Eldrick.
So
Yeah.
so Tom asked Jan, you know, what did if you have an opinion on what these are, and
Oh,
Jan
yeah.
didn't have a strict one, but he did say, he's like, listen, I have a friend who was in the CIA who worked on, who was in the military and then the CIA. He worked on these cases, some of them anyway, and he said, he's like, I don't know what they are, but I do know that they're nasty.
Yeah.
Like they're not
Wow.
friends. So that's
Yeah.
what he told Jan.
They're not what?
Interesting.
They're not our friends.
Our friends. Oh, okay. See, so yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
That's super
it makes
interesting.
sense, you know, like when you're surveilling military bases, atomic research, you know, it's why else would you do that if not to gather intelligence on your own part,
Intelligence.
you know,
Mhm.
and see what these monkeys are up to, you know, and
Mhm.
I mean, there's theories, there's so many
Well,
different
especially when you're blowing up things. I mean, I think it seems like a good reason to kind of check in, though.
Trinity. Yeah, going back to Trinity. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
Do you guys have, I mean, what are your personal theories that you kind of gravitate towards or favor when it comes to the UFO phenomenon, just in general?
I'll go first, and then John, I know you're hesitant about your theory, but I feel like you can totally do it because this is why we argue all the time.
Oh, we want to hear it. Like this is what this is what this show is
Yeah.
about. We just want to have
It's just
conversation.
theories. Yeah,
Yeah.
theories. You don't have to own it.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally think, like, I don't know. I don't know where they're from. I do think that their intentions are not benevolent.
Okay.
If they were, there's a million different ways to portray that. At the
Mhm.
very best, whatever it is, wherever it's from, whether it's interdimensional, whether it's extraterrestrial, whatever, it is so indifferent. It is so indifferent to us.
Mm.
It only seems to react when there are these nuclear tests that go on, and
Mhm.
the fact that like
Mhm.
we have the nuclear bomb. So I mean, that to me already signifies something that's just like that doesn't look at us on the same level, right? And
Okay.
and has, when Jan says they're nasty, that just could be a level of indifference that we would show to an ant. We step on an
Right.
ant,
Exactly.
the ant next to it's like, oh wow, that's nasty, but like we don't even give it a second thought.
Intentions were,
Yeah.
yep.
True.
So I mean, I don't know, and there's so many people now leading the field. Diana Pasulka has interesting theories. I know Richard Dolan has interesting theories. And there's of course the Tom DeLongian, like could be time traveler.
Secret machines and
Yeah, yes, the whole secret machines thing, which is very interesting. And I think what it comes down to is nobody really knows. And
Right.
that's really the scary part.
Yeah.
that's what I say.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I say. John?
Yeah. I go back and forth going through the theories. I do think what I tend to gravitate towards is the spiritual reality of it. I
Mhm.
do think that, and which is a more, I think, especially doing research, we have timelines like dating back to supposed sightings that are similar in description, going back to the 800s, if not more. Now you can even get it. You could draw the biblical
Right.
correlations. So that to me makes the most sense. I have a hard time buying I know there's the zoo theory sort of that, again, like we're answer them and they're watching us. That to me seems like a form of what they would want you to think. It's a form of delusion in a way, and making us
Control
feel
system,
small. It's yeah.
like
So
Jack
which
Gillespie
and these highly advanced creatures, especially if you're going to start buying the more ancient sightings, like they've been around for
Right.
a couple thousand years, and they're sticking probes in some of us and abducting certain people, which are, if you, again, that is more research, and if you haven't looked into that, are
Oh.
plenty of them totally legitimate.
Yep.
And this idea that these are highly advanced beings doing these things just seems awfully strange to me. And just certain sightings, which we don't tackle in Sign, because there were certain ones like this, but pretty unsubstantiated. Things like some of these machines literally merging together like swarms of bees, and there's enough sightings about those to realize that those seem to be legitimate too. Again, like corroborating witnesses and people from across the pond that didn't know that person had a sighting like that all the way in the other side of the world, describing it in the same way. Which to me doesn't speak to technology at all. This is not
Right.
That's not highly advanced technology that they're describing. So it's things like that tend to pull me in that direction. So yeah, that's but I genuinely try to keep an open mind about it. I don't like to get prideful about this stuff, especially because I was prideful before looking into it about what I thought they were, and they weren't real.
Wow.
To that point, I mean, I was just talking with someone about the Fatima, right? Like when there was that mass sighting.
The children.
Yeah. Well, it was more than children. I think it was like an entire city, right?
You're right.
That saw like the holy
the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, the Virgin Mary, right? And there's actual photos of it, of the when it happened, and what you see are like it's just these blobs, right? These blobs of orbs, and this is something that was witnessed by so many people. It's such a mystery as to like what really happened, but the fact that they saw the Virgin Mary, and then the picture shows just like this like little orb or this little blob, and corroborated again by so many people, makes me wonder, if it's something where you can just like drop, like, let's say an orb of some sorts that maybe affects the EM field or your consciousness somehow. And you see this, you have mass sighting of people that see the Virgin Mary, you have now influenced that entire population
Group
for
of people.
generations. So those
You're
people
right.
end up, like being successful or dying or killing each other or whatever. There's a complex number of things that can actually happen with all those people. But like by and large, you have influenced that place for generations to come. Now they are deeply, deeply, at least it's instilled in them that this happened, and it has
Right.
this overtone to it. So I wonder, the spiritual side, there's a habit of these things being tricksters, right? And
Mhm.
pretending to be something that they're not. And I just wonder if that's the thing, that you can drop something like a sphere of influence, influences mass amount of people. Next thing you know, 5 generations later, you have people like literally building a cult off of this, or a religion off of it, or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
So many different
Right.
things. So
So yeah, that would speak to spiritual delusion in my mind. I mean, and that's why I find so you're talking with Jacques Vallée,
Right.
spoke about this stuff, and he even reinterprets certain miracles or sightings or spiritual events as interdimensional.
Yeah.
Whereas I find that a little strange. I'm like, why not just accept that they're spiritual?
Right.
But that's where
Because
the argument comes in.
right, right. Because it's too much to accept that other realm
Right,
of
or we come from
existence.
a certain specific paradigm that we view
Right.
these things through.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
As opposed, so we all of us seek to understand it in the context of that paradigm, as opposed to it,
Yep.
using it to challenge what we already believe.
I
They're
think
demons,
early.
John. Just say it. They're demons.
Yeah, no, that's what I believe. Yeah.
No, I mean, some people, feel that that's the case, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that there's a lot of people that believe that. And I think there's a case to be made for that. So I'm definitely open-minded on that as well.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing. Like, you just have to keep an open mind, because at the end of the day, nobody knows. It really, like, the people that are read in. I have to think that they're like, it's like, maybe, I don't know, unless you're a contractor at Lockheed that's working on like a specific type of propulsion, and it comes from something exotic, right? That you might have some idea, but the people that actually have the puzzle pieces together for the last 75 years at least, it's got to be like on one hand, maybe two.
So how do you feel about the discussion of disclosure then? I mean, if you think maybe these are, malevolent, or maybe not even malevolent, they're just not benevolent. eh, do you think that the secrecy is justified, or do you think, or where do where, what's your opinion?
I mean, that's an interesting question. Like, I mean, gut reaction is no, it's not justified, because this potentially changed the way we think as
Right.
a human race, right? But you can also make the argument, well, when we're working on the Manhattan Project, that should not be out in the open, because
Right.
nation state interests, and also, like, you don't want to change the way people think yet, until you're done with the project, you're done with the atom bomb. It's hard to say, like, I do think that the people doing this, at least in the beginning, are coming from a very patriotic sense of self-preservation, right?
Mhm.
For their country and for the world in general. What I don't agree with, that it's gone on for so long now, that it's almost criminal. Like, that, you think about
Right.
it, that's almost 100 years now, of gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Almost 100 years of just being like, no, there's nothing here. There's absolutely nothing here. You are now directly influencing the course of humanity,
Right.
one way or another. And it's just like, some part of me is like, that's not right. But it makes me wonder then, what if it really
How
is justified? Yeah,
right.
Right.
How bad can it be that people are willing to go to these lengths to
exactly.
keep it
Yeah. And it
secret?
just,
If that's their motivation, and then you look at the flip side and you're like, okay, well, maybe their motivation is this other, money and black box programs and all this other stuff, then maybe it's not so much that they care about us
I
and
do,
what we're
I
gonna
do think it's
learn.
some of that too. I mean, I do think when you're the DoD and you're contracting out to Lockheed and Boeing and all these aerospace companies, there is a competitive edge to be had, knowing certain things, and not having China know it, not having Russia
Yes.
know it.
Right.
So I do see that. I do see that side, and I am somewhat sympathetic to that. But I think overall, and I'm
But
not
if you
sure.
look,
Actually, I've never asked John. I don't know if he agrees with me here, but like, I think overall, it's done a disservice to humanity.
if you look at the Manhattan Project, you know, people knew that this was coming, right? I mean, we had certain information. We didn't have to have all the details. We just um or you know in other words, acknowledging the UFOs are real, or UAPs are real, or the phenomenon is real, and maybe not giving all the details out to everybody is to me two different things.
Hmm.
Uh Versus just keeping it completely secret and lying about it. I don't know, what do you think, John?
Yeah, it's difficult for me because I mean, my immediate reaction is like, I'm not going to trust whatever you guys say anyway. But
There
what's
you go.
So
but
true. So
you know what I
true.
mean? So like, and I think they know, they know that as well. So it's like we could tell you the truth or we could lie to your face. In any case, what's that going to change? Are you actually like they could come out and say these UOPs, this is highly advanced extraterrestrial technology. They've given us the technology. We've used it to improve our technology since the 40s. Like, okay, but the
Justified
thing
it,
is, like, especially because you've lost any goodwill you would have
credibility.
anyway because
Yep.
you were lying for 80 years, right? 70 years. And then all of a sudden it becomes a huge hot topic on the interconnectivity now of social media that it becomes impossible for you to deny. And now you've come out and said, well, actually, no, this is true.
Right.
So, but you've been lying for 70 years and there's been no reform or anything. You haven't like changed your ways or had a change of heart.
Right.
So why are you telling us? Why are you now admitting to it now?
Right.
Mhm.
You
All
only
those
admitted
lies and-
you only admitted you had the affair after I caught you.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. Right. It's a great
So
analogy.
I'm not going to trust you
So it's
anymore.
so
Well,
it's,
and
it's hard for me to have an opinion on that.
it's also
Yeah.
kind of like the videos. People say we want video, we want video, we want video evidence. But then if they actually gave us video evidence, everybody's gonna go, oh
Nobody
no,
believes it.
it's CGI, it's not real.
Right.
So it's
And
kind
that
of the
should be
same
your
thing.
that should be your default. And I mean, it's just fascinating because there's things like again, the government can be so tricky with subterfuge and disinformation, like Tom said, with these hoaxes, with the Majestic 12, for example. They poison the well where there's so much truth, but all it takes is you just throw a little lie here and there. Once lies found out, the whole house of cards crumble. Because if
Right.
once you discover one part of it is true, you can't, or untrue, you can't accept any of it because you don't know what's true and what
Yeah.
isn't. I mean, even Roswell, they seem to me, and Roswell, like we do touch on, but there's so much subterfuge around it that we don't go into it deep because we can't substantiate
The
what
media's own
happened.
series. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, but it's just they do. It seems to me that they are interested in us believing that they did find a UFO there, that there is something very, very strange.
Who is interested? The government or
the government? So
phenomenon?
like there was that. Who was it? What was his name? Haney, where he gave a talk about it in the the 90s, and
Right.
he mentioned that it was
They were going to come clean, and then they
it was
said it didn't.
and he said it was they talked about the test dummies, where the official
Oh,
story was
right.
that there were test dummies in 40, and then the journalist asked him, he goes, well, didn't you guys start using test dummies in 52? He goes, yeah. He goes, that was 5 years later. And he's like, yeah, so the test dummies, it was a time jump. He said this.
Oh yes, I think I remember.
Like he's saying, so there were, it was an interdimensional jump in time where it became test dummies or something. This is, and I forget what the journalist said. I mean, he was incredulous, obviously.
That's
but
interesting.
The guy saying this has to know this sounds insane. Like he has to know how crazy this sounds, and he has to know no one is actually going to buy this. And this this didn't like seem
That's
to catch
why he did it.
catch, and that's exactly. So that to me is like that's why he did it. He
Mhm.
wants you to believe that, or he wants you to think that it's crazy, or what? Or, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy as to be. It becomes crazy like a fox. Is what I mean. Like no one's going to buy it. That sounds insane. But this is what they want you to believe, or want you to believe that this is what their perspective is. And I don't know why exactly. Obviously, because no one seems to know except the people who were there.
John, when you came into this, what took you by surprise the most, or what was it what you learned and that the phenomenon is real, or is it that it was covered up the way it was covered up?
just the fact that it was able to be covered up, I think, is what shocked me
Yeah.
the most. Just on like
Yeah.
on a societal, sociological level.
Yep.
Right.
Again, it's just it happened worldwide. There were just newspapers across the country. Again, I mean, I guess a little spoiler, but we do it in issue 3 when you have the July 4th. There were so many sightings in July 4th. There were
That's my
just
first sighting date, guys, by the way, which also makes this I think another one, the other issue I have, so powerful. Anyway.
right. It seems to happen. Yeah, right. It happens on
Yeah.
certain days, right? So
Yeah.
that week, I mean, just one of them. There was one in Portland where the phones in one of the police stations would go off the hook, and the cops chase down a UFO.
Yeah.
Like they
Yep.
chase it down. I mean, and this is just the 40s, let alone the 90s. There was a crazy one in Arizona where like a 6,000, like 3 football
lights,
field
yeah.
length spaceship that a ton of people saw.
Yep.
Just things like this where I'm like, how is this not front page news? And not only that, how
Right.
was this front page news for months? And then within a year, 2 years, a few years, you're insane if you ever thought these were real.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You're
That to
right.
me is so shocking.
And that's
It
why
is.
media plays such a big,
And I find
big
it scary.
deal. It plays such an important role in, again, how this is portrayed. And like, if it's
Yeah.
always portrayed as a B movie, that's silly. It's always gonna be taken that way, because that's
Right.
just it's a
Right.
conditioning.
Which might be
over time.
intentional too, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
making
I
these
think
films
so.
and making them silly and ridiculous
Yeah.
and making people surrounding.
I really do think so.
I mean,
think it's
like a
part of
really,
it.
yeah. I think that's certainly possible. But yeah, just the idea of wow, you guys were able to memory hold this immediately, and if you can memory hold this, like what
Mhm.
can't you memory hold?
And you're right, because I've done a little research of my hometown newspapers, and there was a couple of articles like in the 70s, or maybe I think it was the 70s, late 70s, maybe early 80s. UFO seen over this little town, next door to me, and police went and investigated. Like literally, it was just in the newspaper, like you said, like it was just a thing that happened. They even covered the Travis story in our front page newspaper, because we're a couple hours away from Arizona from where he was at, so I imagine that's why they covered it. But it was just part of the paper, like, oh, this is what we're doing. And then a few years later, you're right, it's like taboo.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
from
scary, because I wonder, because I grew up I've thought about this a lot, with a huge fear of UFOs. I used to have nightmares. I used to have
Oh,
this
wow.
fear, and I wonder what I was watching, or what at the time was being portrayed in my world that gave me that, or maybe it just came naturally. I don't know. But the media definitely is an influence on how we think of things.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
It's like you don't even know it, is a scary part. And that just goes back to advertising. It goes back to so many different things that, like, it's just like the way they're able to memory hold this, again, was such a shock to me as well. Especially when you see the newspapers. I mean, front page news, airliner captains talking about, like, there's just one guy who we cover in in issue 3, is famously saying, like, he's about to take off, and he makes a joke at Kenneth Arnold's expense, and he's like, I'll see it when I believe it, and
Yeah,
he
believe it when I see
literally
it,
he flies off, and within like
He sees
a half
it.
hour, so he sees it.
Sees it later.
The
Is that
co-pilot sees it,
coincidence? I mean,
sees it, and it's like, you can't make this shit up, it's
yeah, it's
wild.
like it was like a mass deprogramming essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, we got to change the program. You guys believe all this stuff. We can't have that.
Used that word you used, memory hold. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Elaborate on that for me. Talk a little bit. I've never heard that, and I love
Yeah.
it. It sounds
So the idea
like,
of the idea of the memory hole being like, oh, remember when all this happened, and you just kind of chuck it down a well through mass media bombardment, mass media manipulation, lying, propaganda, whatever it is, and we just forget. We all just, as a society, just forget that happened. Obviously, if you dig into it, it's there. But just culturally, like,
Right.
our cultural memory just pretended that never happened.
Yep.
yeah.
And that's what happened with those. We just
Yeah.
pretended it didn't happen. And Kenneth Arnold actually was crazy. or looking
Yeah.
for fame, or he was a con man
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
For because he his ambition was to get his career and life destroyed, and so that's why he lied.
He had a funny story. He was supposed to go on television with Kehoe, right? And I think that's the show. I don't have the exact date in front of me. I believe it's the 1950s. And then Kehoe goes on and he mentions the estimate of the situation, but on live TV. But as he does it, they literally mute his mic on live TV. And Kenneth Arnold is supposed to be on that show, right? And they told him, like, we want to talk about, like, why you think this is real, your experience that, like, you're so famously known for. And he found out that he's going to be a shoo-in, in between people talking about having contact with people from Venus and something like that, like something crazy like that. He literally, the morning of, sent them a telegram saying, I'm sorry, because of this, I cannot be on this show. I refuse to dignify this with my presence, and that to me, like, A, is hilarious, like the day of when you're supposed to rehearse for it and film it. And then B, the fact that he just, like, he had the integrity to be like, you know what? No, I'm not gonna do this.
Which is a great, but it's also a great example of how the programming was working.
Yeah.
Like this is how, so now we're going to associate this sighting with obvious either crazy people or grifters. We're like, no one's going to believe this, and these people, and so we're going to make Arnold seem crazy by association.
Yeah.
And even Kehoe, after that, like, we have the interview after where Kehoe discusses this, and he's talking to the guy, and he's like, yeah, my mic was cut, and the guy's like explaining why the mic was cut. It's like, no, I forget what he said. It was something ridiculous. Like, it's standard practice. Like, you started to go off script, and as soon as because like he gave them the script that had to be approved, and as soon as you went off script, they cut your mic, and it's like, but this has never happened before. Like,
oh my gosh,
this is not standard procedure, and
It reminds me of the Arizona case. You guys, remember the alien they sent out with the mayor.
You regret that after.
Yeah.
Right? You regret that after. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he actually saw the UFO and he's taking it back. But yeah, I mean, it was just to ridicule the topic. And I mean, they had so many people show up apparently, afterwards to talk about their sightings, and then they just ridiculed it.
Yeah. John, it was like basically they had a press conference about the Phoenix Lights, and was it the governor or
the governor or the mayor?
Yeah, came out, and it was supposed to be like a serious press conference about this, and he comes up and struts out like a dude in an alien costume and says, "Oh yeah, we found the culprit, ha ha ha," and it was turned into like a big joke.
Media circus.
But he's on record later saying, like, I really regret doing that because I saw it.
He saw it himself.
And it's
but he got his orders,
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
The way that humans can be manipulated is truly one of the scariest things to me about being human. I mean, wasn't there some Stanford experiment where they were able to, like, convince people to be able to, like, murder each other just from, do you know what I'm talking about?
The Stanford prison experiment.
Yeah, I mean, that's so scary. The fact that, like, our minds are just so easily manipulated. I mean, we just always have to be on our guard and do the research for ourselves and make sure that we're thinking things through on our own,
Yeah.
No, you're right.
And I just wonder if part of it too is, again, like that paradigm of what we believe, like that seeing a UFO or what looks like a spaceship, that is something quite literally is unbelievable. So now it's bumping up against your view of reality.
Right.
If you've never seen that before. So it's like, oh my God, I saw that. And then they make you feel crazy. Be like, no, you guys didn't see that at all. And part of it, I think the manipulation is there are people who want to believe that they didn't see it. You want to just kind of forget.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, you know what? And like, you get far enough from the memory, you're like, yeah, maybe it didn't happen. I mean, this happens even with, like, spiritual, metaphysical experiences.
Yeah.
Like, depending on the person, it's like, yeah, no, that didn't happen. You're right. So they rely, I think they rely on that too, as well. Because it's hard to, again, like even the Arizona one, 3 football field length UFO, and which multiple people saw. I mean, how does your brain can't even hold on video? Like, your brain can't even hold it. I mean, again, that was in the newspaper.
All over.
But it's like, you could read that, and a lot of people, I think your eyes would just glaze over, like your brain just can't take it, so you just flip to the page.
Well,
It's
even
like,
if you know they exist, like me coming into the topic, I knew of people like growing up. My dad, we had a sighting coming from one town to another, but you're little. It was they said this thing's flying back and forth, chasing them, across the sky, and they watch it for a long time. You hear that story, and then my dad knew like one of the guys that was with Travis in Arizona. He was so you hear that story, you hear that that was what I had heard, his experience or story. And so I kind of knew these things were real, but it doesn't matter. Like when you start having an experience or you see something that is not prosaic, you still can't accept it. I mean, there's just something there. I mean, you process it eventually, but there is something there that's like, this is not reality, and then you try and convince yourself that you are crazy, you didn't see that. Because it's easier to walk away
return
with
to
that.
normal society.
Yeah, it's easier to walk away with that than to be like, no, you're seeing UFOs, like you're crazy, so it's such a psychologically powerful event. And you're right, Ariel, the ability for manipulation. People talk about that a lot with this, but I always say I think humans have the ability to manipulate us much more than I've been manipulated by the phenomenon so far anyway. But yeah, it's really scary to not know what these things are, really.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great point too. Like we're able to be manipulated, just through advertising and through media, like on
Yes.
on a prosaic level.
And on
Like,
purpose.
yeah, but
I
can you
mean,
imagine though, like on something that has a much more deeper understanding of who or what we are and how we function,
yeah,
what that would be able to do versus
True.
like, like we have to
Yeah.
study ourselves to do what we do. That for me is really, really serious. We might be manipulated in ways that we can't understand. We can't even
Right.
fathom.
Right. Especially if you accept some of the stories of the telepathy and mind reading and all that. That's where it gets really creepy and scary, is
Yeah.
this ability for them to know our thoughts.
And if they can implant screen memories and stuff like that.
So yeah.
Yeah,
fascinating
that's.
topic.
I mean,
Well,
like the aerial
that would go
phenomenon.
back to my spiritual reality theory, because that is classic demonology as well.
Yeah.
Because they can do that, in the tradition.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
They're not
Cameras
opening the
here.
second issue. Some of them.
What's that?
They literally leave it in the freaking thing, and they're like, "I just don't want to open it. It looks too nice." I'm like, "Well,
That's great.
yeah, it's great, but read it, please."
But read it.
Yeah.
That
They'll
is
get there
that is
eventually.
a potential downside of it being so nice. It does feel like something you want to display and own
Right.
and be proud of. So that's also cool.
So much.
Yeah. All right, you guys,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an amazing talk. I love tapping into your brains and hearing
Yes.
all the work, literally the labor of love you've put into this. That, like you said, it's a love letter, and I think we receive that and appreciate that work that you guys have put into it. Tell us how we can find you guys, and tell us how we can support the project. Where do they go buy this, and what else? How else can we support you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, we have issue 1 and 2 on BlackTieLabs.NYC. I also just put up the first volume, which is issues 1 and 2 in black and white, but in a nice, thick graphic novel format. So it's a great gift to give someone, the holiday season. And moving forward, it's the way we work is like we put out a black and white issue, we print it domestically, and then we use that money to pay for color, and then eventually print en masse overseas to bring that over and again distribute, so like more people have a chance to like really get it to know this history. More people like I gave it to someone at the coffee shop recently, and they a couple days later, like he read it, like I'm going there to get my coffee, he just asked me, like, yeah, so did all that really happen? So that's like that's the message we're trying to basically push out. So they can support us through BlackTieLabs.NYC. Follow us on Twitter. We probably are going to start a Kickstarter campaign really soon to fund basically the next issues 3 and 4. We want to spend more time focusing on doing this at a more rapid pace, because there was like a 6-month, 7th-month in between issue 1 and 2, and like we would get a lot of emails from people, and that was really cool too, by the way. People
Yeah.
were like, hey, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? But we want to centralize things and just kind of focus and do it a lot faster. So
we're going to move a lot faster now.
yeah. And so be on the lookout for that. And, you know, we have competition now. Dark Horse apparently thought we had a great idea, and they took it. And, you know, it's funny.
I don't know anything about this. What's going on?
Maybe we don't want to talk. No, just kidding. We share love everywhere.
Dark Horse came out with their own series of nonfiction UFO stories. They came out with Blue Book 1963 in September, and now they'll be coming out with Blue Book 1947.
The origin of the UFO phenomenon, right? And what's interesting is I sent someone from that creative team a copy of our issue back in like November, December. And I also sent Dark Horse, you know, because the idea, if we get published, we can bring this to more people. And again, it becomes a bigger conversation. I sent Dark Horse, they require a preview. And a large part of our preview was the Kenneth Arnold, sequence. And lo and behold, they come out with, their own Kenneth Arnold, 1947, the origin of UFOs. And it's just like, dude, you know, like, but I do think that, like, you know, we have a community, we have people that recognize that, like, what we're doing is, like, we have something really special collectively. And, you know, so I do think, like, you know, ultimately it'll be good for us because you can compare it to something that's probably gonna be very watered down. You know, no offense to that team, but I don't see.
Yeah, you know the work you put into it.
Yeah. And but yeah, BlackTieLabs.NYC, and you know, we'll when we put out the Kickstarter or anything like that nature, we'll definitely put it out in, you know, through a megaphone. And the key is we have to be very transparent, because again, this is a community that is very sensitive to people asking for money for certain things. And you know, if it was up to me, I would self-finance the whole thing. But it's like it's pretty it's pretty expensive. So, you know,
print is never cheap.
No.
Print medium is not cheap.
Yeah, we just want to do it right. We want to do it right. We want to do it right by the community, and we want to do it right by the people that support us. So.
Well, I mean, you're putting out an amazing product. It's quality. I mean, I can attest. I've gotten them and I've ordered them for others, and so I don't think there's any worry about grifting here.
No, and I mean, you guys have put so much of your own time. Yeah, I mean, there's no way you could be considered grifters with how much time and energy and research you have put into this. I mean, there's no way.
Yeah, and the
negative balance.
You're making with your life. Yeah. So thank you
wait,
so much.
but what do you think of the second issue so far?
Oh, I love it.
I need to get it. I don't have it. I just have the first one.
Yeah. So I just started it. I love it. I didn't know. Of course, I'm from New Mexico, so anytime I see us pop up anywhere, I'm excited. Yeah. That's a good one. So that was kind of cool. And I just started getting into it. I guess they're having their sighting. So yeah. I can't wait. It's great. It's beautiful. What can you guys say? I mean, the quality is amazing. So
it's just,
thank you guys. Appreciate
want to give people something they're proud of. You know?
Yeah. And I am. I'm like, you know, you can see I've got it all displayed. So
yeah, it was just such a dream come true to meet you guys and to, you know, see the faces behind this labor of love in this project. And just keep doing what you're doing. I can feel the passion in you guys. I can see it in your eyes and hear it in your voices. And that's just so exciting to have you adding this to our community. So thank you so much for what you're putting out. It's definitely, it's going to leave a legacy, and I can tell.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you guys for having us on.
Thank you guys. This is great.
So much.
We don't get to talk about this stuff with other people.
Oh no, you have to.
We're still crazy where we're, you know, in our relative field. So we're still crazy.
It's great. It's great. And I'll see you guys. I think I won't see you, but I'll hear you on Sunday. We're going to be, I think, on the creator panel on Spaces. So that'll be cool too. So awesome. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Awesome.
All right.
Guys.
See you guys.
Bye.